each other's clothes or hair or general appearance.
I picked that up. I picked that up. That's fine.
It's very
I know
funny.
how
It's
these
the
things work.
polite greeting,
To include you, I like your sweater. I'm a fan of crew necks with
Thank
shirts,
you.
collared shirts underneath.
Thank you.
And I like the ring.
Yes, the the great big turquoise ring. So I just feel like it's a symbol of something.
Well, I'm wearing my great big turquoise ring too. So
Well,
Oh, lovely.
yeah.
I don't know if we're live. I'm just talking,
Yeah.
but if you follow my Twitter at all, you may have seen me tweeting a lot about Robert Bly, who was an American poet and who kind of launched the mythopoeic men's movement in the 90s and is famous for his book about men's spiritual development called Iron John. Are any of you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Well, one of the
Just
things I love about Robert Bly is that he had a ridiculously flamboyant manner of dress, especially when he was in his early 70s and he had long white hair and he would wear a cravat everywhere he went and a paisley vest. But there's a video I watched of him speaking and he raises his hand like this and there's his big turquoise ring. So that's my way of identifying with him.
Well, it's super fabulous. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Well, happy Monday, everybody. It is November 3rd, and welcome to the Solid Ground live stream. We are live with Dr. Dean Abbott. Dean is a coach, mentor, writer, and poet. He holds degrees in philosophy, psychology, theology, and communication. He is a board certified pastoral counselor who works with clients both locally and around the world online. He's the author of 2 books, the creator of the Know Thyself 90-session guided journal, and he lives in Indiana and loves music, cats, and baseball, and big turquoise rings.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I added that last piece.
Did you guys want to have me on here because you wanted to talk about baseball?
Oh, God, no,
that
please.
Dodgers game. Wow. I would be happy to talk about that. That was incredible. Dodgers fan here. Big Dodgers fan. Yes.
Oh
There
my
you go.
goodness.
I
I
don't
know
want to
nothing
hijack
about it.
I don't want to hijack our conversation. But
Well,
if that's on your agenda, I'm open to it.
I'll just introduce Solid Ground for anybody who's not familiar with us or wants to check out our peer support groups. We are missing our Deborah today. I think she's gonna be away from the live stream for a while. So we love Deborah. She's just taking a little break from this. But she usually reads this for us when she's here. So Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and or authoritarian measures, such as medical mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join our peer support group for $10 a month, and you can join our locals forum for just $5 a month. To find out more, please visit Solid Ground. We can't do that. solidgroundsupport.com is not functional anymore. Just go to our Substack. It's Solid Ground Support on Substack. And I will put the links under this video, although I'm always a little bit delayed in doing that after the live stream, but look for them later this day if you're interested. And gosh, we've been having such interesting conversations lately. We kind of felt like we lit a bit of a fire having Dr. Danny Sulikowski on with us, and she talked about women's contribution to societal collapse. It was very interesting. Her theories are fascinating. We really enjoyed talking with her.
And her core point is that women's intrasexual competition brings down the larger structure. That's what I
I think that's fair. That's a fair short summary. And it was interesting. I don't 100% agree. I also don't fully disagree with some of the points that she made, but it's fascinating to see the response from that. And I know online there's such a sense of alienation and relationship pessimism between men and women. And we especially see this online. I don't know how much that translates to real life, but clearly those are the real lives of a lot of people who are expressing it online. And you've been really, I've really enjoyed your Twitter content, your X content. You talk about relationships a lot. And you were just saying before we went live that you kind of get stick from both ends on this one. You get
Yeah.
people. I'm sure your ideas are resonating with a lot of people, because when I suggested you for this, right away, Jenny was like, "Oh my God, I love his stuff." I'm really, so you're resonating with people,
Good to know.
but you're also getting some criticism. And I'm just curious, like, how did your thoughts on relationships evolve, and what are they? And this is such a broad prompt. I know
Right.
it's terribly broad, but I'm just curious to open the conversation up with you.
Well, I think my thoughts evolved, well, probably from 20 years ago when I first sort of stumbled on what was then the manosphere, right? Well, what was then not even the manosphere, it was a few blogs. And sort of read those, and it was eye-opening. I think up till that time, probably in my mid-30s, I had not really thought much about the differences between the sexes and that sort of thing. And in 2005, 2006, way before there was what we now would think of as a manosphere, there were kind of proto-manosphere blogs out there that um, I found both disgusting and helpful. And sort of over the years, I just continued to follow that content. When I really got active on Twitter in about 2015, I followed some of those people. Some of them I stuck with, and I've just followed the discourse over the years, and began to just reflect on it a lot. And then probably 5 years ago, uh, I started to get a lot of requests for advice via Twitter. And that's kind of how my coaching practice began. I just thought, well, I should make a formal way for these people to talk to me. And that's been going for the last 5 years or so. And I guess and I think just really working with people in their around their concerns around relationships of all kinds has, really given me a window into what people go through and that sort of thing. And of course, I have relationships of my own. And so just being a reflective person, doing lots of reading, working with people one on one, I think has brought me to where I am now. In terms of what maybe the thing to do is just talk a little bit about things I wrote this week since they're freshest to mind. I think the place I would start is just rhetorically that if we follow the discourse on Twitter, which I don't, it's hard for me to refer to as X, but on Twitter, um, I think the first thing we have to know when we approach this is that algorithms don't reward reasonableness. Okay. And so that part of the problem is that we have this aspect, this very personal aspect of human life where our discourse about it is driven by algorithms maximized for engagement. And so it does create a picture that may be unnecessarily hostile. That doesn't mean it doesn't reflect real realities, though. So, but I think it's important to approach, if we're going to approach online discourse about it, I think we have to do it with a little bit of a grain of salt to say, what we're experiencing, the level of hostility, et cetera, that we're experiencing online is not necessarily reflective of the attitudes of the average person. So I did two things this week. One of them was I tried to write a little bit about what women often don't understand about men's experience. And the key point I was trying to make is that still in our culture, men are generally expected to be the initiators of relationships. They're expected to be the pursuers. And I've seen quite a bit of worry, online talk, statistics sort of suggesting that young men, especially, are not pursuing at all. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that said maybe upward to 50% of men between 18 and 24 had never been on a date.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to say, like, why might that be? And one of the things I said was that because men are typically considered to be the initiators, and you see, especially on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, you see lots of videos of young women complaining that no men ever approach them. So I do think this is a real phenomenon. And part of what I was trying to say in my longer tweet about this was I think many women do not understand the degree to which rejection is a formative experience in young men's lives. And so when, especially because they are expected to be the instigator of the relationship, that when they have no confidence that rejection won't be their outcome, and they have many other ways of insulating themselves digitally against loneliness, that to complain, well, no men approach me, I think you've got to understand something of their point of view, which is, why should I? And particularly because I think we've all been trained to treat relationships so transactionally and to see one another as so fungible that it's the case for many men that they could initiate a relationship, have it reciprocated, invest in this woman for a year or two, and have her say, "Well, I think not. Bye bye." And I think probably in the past when we were less atomized culture, there probably were more incentives to maintain a relationship once you were in it. And now we are in a place where there's only incentive to try trading up. And so when you're a man who has invested and invested and invested, and there's no stigma about her just taking your investment and leaving, I think that is a really formative experience that no man wants to repeat. And I had, lots of young men say, this is exactly it. This is exactly it. And then also, why do you hate women so much? And I and I and I think it's just so important that we be able to sort of articulate that both men and women have legitimate needs, concerns, feelings, desires, and that there's no way to improve the discourse, and there's certainly no way to improve the dating practice without recognizing that each, that all human beings have these legitimate needs and desires. And so this is why I really, I'm very hard on the sort of young anonymous men who criticize me because, well, one reason is that often young men sort of need older men to tell them to stop being dumb. Okay, and that you can only you have to break through to them in some way, right? And they respond to authority and power in a way that just a sort of pure empathy does not. It has to. It's very interesting. I have often been kind of mean to these guys and had them come back to me. And once I sense that they have openness, they're going to stop calling me names. Then that's the time for empathy. That's the time to say, "Hey, I understand where you're coming from." But the reason that that's very difficult is because so many of them have just committed themselves wholeheartedly to a kind of black-pilled cynicism, and they're unwilling to be even teachable because they've had bad experiences, or they've been so absorbed in the worst and darkest parts of the manosphere or whatever that you know they're kind of warped in a way that would require a lot of one-on-one relationship with a more mature man to really resolve for them. So that I had a lot of that experience this week.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's enough to get us started, but
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear your experiences with the the manosphere, so-called manosphere. Um, that it is pretty fascinating. Like the the conversation we had with Dr. Danny Sulikowski got upwards of 1,000 comments.
Wow.
Some of them, a lot of them were pretty critical, like yeah, women basically women suck.
Right. Right.
And it's interesting to me. I mean, when I first saw that, the first time I saw that kind of response was I had a conversation with another guest who she described herself as an ex-feminist, and it was a fantastic conversation. I'm blanking on her name right now. Do you guys remember? I could look her up.
Darlene Lev.
What, say it again?
Darlene Lev.
Darlene Lev.
I just
Yes.
watched that this morning. It was great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed speaking with her. We had her on the live stream too. Thanks for being so quick with that, Jenny. Sometimes I just go blank.
I was looking her up this morning myself.
Yeah. And I got the comments on that were also really critical, and they were really critical specifically of me. She was there were some criticisms of her, but specifically of me as the interviewer, because I pushed back on some of the statements that she made I just offered an anecdotal response, like, here's what I've observed. I don't know if that's necessarily that way in all cases. And so I did a little bit of pushback, and the comments were really vicious. And this has been, maybe I'm naive, but it's been a pretty friendly YouTube channel. My audience mostly our conversations have mostly been around psychology and education, and they've been mostly talking to and with people who are really concerned about the same topics that we're talking about. And that was the first time I'd gotten just a ton of nasty comments. And there's just this current of anger that I'm seeing in some online male spaces and
sure.
expressed by men. And that time with Darlene Lev, I mean, that put me into a bit of a depression, just getting constant negative feedback. And we have fantastic responses from most of the people, especially the regulars who watch the live streams.
Right.
So it stunned me. And it really made me more aware of something that's going on. And I don't want to just ignore that. I don't want to just dismiss it and write it off. There's obviously something going on that's causing a lot of people, especially a lot of these men. And I'm sure that there's a corresponding alienation in women too. It's just, it's not coming at me over the internet right now. That's causing a lot of nihilism, a lot of relationship pessimism, and just a deep sense of alienation and disenfranchisement. And so without knee-jerk dismissing that, I'd rather go into it and explore it and pay attention to it and see what is this an expression of and what's really going on.
Yeah, do you know what they were particularly critical of your pushing back on? Like, what was the point that set them off?
I guess I'd have to go back through comments and try to distill it. But it was she talked about never really settling into a long-term relationship because of feminist teachings that told her to be suspicious of men and to value career and the other social life building exercises over marriage and family.
Right.
And I talked about some of the reasons why I think that and we've talked about this just in recent dialogues. Jennifer brought it up really well. She said some of the ways that men or women have counseled other women: make sure you get your education first, make sure you have a solid foundation under you so that you're not financially bereft if he leaves you. Some of those reasons why women might shore up their own resources and not go into a complete trusting relationship with somebody who could leave them holding the bag and holding the children and really out of luck. And I said that had happened to me. I've been divorced. I've been a single mother, left holding. And so it's sort of, you either, and then the response is, well, you picked wrong.
Right.
So it's either you're need to trust.
Have a crystal ball, don't you know?
Yeah.
That means that everybody who's ever been divorced then did something wrong. They just chose the wrong person. I mean, and they should have somehow known.
Yeah, so it's kind of that both sides thing,
How do
right?
you know?
It's the you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry. Do you want to say more, or did you?
No, that was kind of the it was like you were wrong for not trusting, and then you were wrong for trusting.
Right.
So
Let me respond to that. I think when it comes to these young men, the challenge is actually twofold. One is that what they need to hear is that their anger is legitimate, that they have legitimate reasons to be angry. Okay. And that that typically that anger is dismissed. And it is, I think, no, there are very few people who are capable of and willing to deal with the substantive issues about which they're angry without simply saying, essentially, you're male, so it doesn't matter. And they are very angry and they want to be heard. The problem is that there is no way to speak to them because they are driven by such intense fury and such intense loneliness, I'm sure, that they have almost ceased to reason. And so there is no way to win, right? So it's you trusted, so therefore you're wrong. You didn't trust, therefore you're wrong. What matters is not to find a kind of a reasonable understanding of the various kinds of situations that can come up in life, but to express their rage. And so this is what they're about. And I th I don't know how you address that except in person, essentially as an older man who's willing to hear all of their grievances without dismissing them. And I think often their behavior online is so repugnant that they get themselves into a terrible loop where they are automatically rejected, which becomes, fodder for their assumption that they will be rejected, and etc. But but I think the fundamental point is that somewhere at some point, if we want things to improve, they have got to be validated. Now, that doesn't mean everything they've ever done is valid, doesn't mean all their behavior is good, but that their understanding of their own situation has got to be heard. And I have advocated for them enough online to see how impossible, certainly online, it is to get that through. To say on Twitter or whatever, men are legitimate people. Men are human beings, and they have emotional lives, uh, and we are formed by our experiences. Is essentially to put yourself in a position where some women will respond almost immediately by saying, "Whatever you are suffering, you deserve."
Yes,
Now, I
I've
have
seen
heard
that
that.
many times.
Yeah, I have heard that. So imagine what it's like to be a 22-year-old guy who can't get a job, and he reads online, "Whatever you are suffering, you deserve it." And so that's the people who are irrationally enraged. And I think, especially as a person who's very interested in mentoring younger men, the difficulty for them is that to grow, they would have to give up some of that. And they would have to give up their position, which is total helplessness. Things are bad, and therefore I can do nothing except sit in my basement and be mad. And to really help them move toward a healthier masculinity means asking them to embrace their agency and to say, you can do things, right? Here are some things you could do for your own well-being. And that is so deeply resented that it's in a weird way that they so identify with their sex, like I'm a man and they've done these mean things to me because I'm a man, but they also kind of reject the core components of more mature masculinity. And so they're in a catch 22. They've put themselves in a catch 22 because they won't become more fully maturely masculine in a healthy way, and they also won't give up their rage at women.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Can I just
Yeah.
make a quick point there?
Yeah.
I agree with you, but um, I don't see any role modeling in mainstream culture for healthy, real masculinity. It doesn't exist. It seems like you either have this sort of white collar, soft-handed, HR fluent man, and I'm not saying they're bad men at all. I'm just saying that's not the core of masculinity. Or you have manosphere, which is very much contaminated with, even if not everyone is as bad as Andrew Tate, as sort of an Andrew Tate, unchecked. Well, a lot of it is misogyny. So where are the good role models for these boys? Like that would be self-sacrifice. Like, to me, the elements of masculinity would be self-sacrificing, disciplined, stoic, um, and showing leadership qualities. But where are those outlets for those boys to develop these traits that I think lead to healthy adulthood?
Hmm. Well, I don't think there are many, right? But the first thing that occurred to me is that perhaps part of the reason why the murder of Charlie Kirk resonated so broadly across our culture is that he was one of those, and he was taken out. Uh, and but I think too that at least going back several years, the influence that someone like Jordan Peterson had on young men, and I think there are more. I think there are some sort of examples of healthy masculinity, even white collar men, so to speak, who are sort of maybe have smaller audiences online, etc. But across our mainstream culture, there probably isn't many. There probably aren't many.
So, what guidance do you offer a young man who basically is just black pilled, angry, but also despairing, thinking he'll just never have a relationship and he doesn't want one anyhow because women can't be trusted? And what's really his purpose
Mhm.
in life? And it's just sort of, floating goalless a bit.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is tell me everything that bothers you, right? And what can be validated, let's validate it, right? Because I think too, maybe I was a university professor for a long time. And one of the things I observed is that even in educational settings, the best students in the room are always girls, right?
Mm.
The ones who speak up are always girls. The ones who get told to be quiet are always boys. And I think when you are a young man, you come through cultural institutions, and it's very easy to get the sense that you are sort of second class person there, just because you are male. And I think it's very easy then to assume that something like academic success is for women. And I've had other conversations, maybe on a podcast somewhere, about what I think would be for young men, certainly the value of single sex education, where they are allowed to compete academically with one another as hard as they can, because they certainly don't do that now. Um, and so I think you have to understand that his formative experience has been blackpilling, right? He's blackpilled because he's been through a lot of blackpilling experiences. And I think the next thing is to say, okay, and if he's saying, I hate women, I can never have a relationship, fine. Well, I would say, look at how much in your rage at women you have built your entire life around women. When your whole lack of motivation is, I can't get a woman, your life is not about you, it's about them. And part of what we want women, part of the way we want to kind of reduce that rage is to say your life can be about your own agenda and not about whether or not women approve of you. And so part of the problem with like the black-pilled young man who hates women is that he actually has built his whole life around whether or not what they think of him. And so part of what I would want to do is to help him come into a different place where he has a sense of himself outside the purview of women, right? Like, does he approve of himself? What is his relationship with himself like? And I'm sure it's awful, right? Like he probably translates, no woman will ever like me because I'm terrible. And here are all the ways I'm terrible. And this is probably the loop in his mind. Okay. So I think we want to basically, in a way, help him to separate himself from the power that he has given women. Like, I might want to say to him, let's assume, it's as absurd as it is, that literally every woman in the world, all 4.5 billion of them or whatever, literally loathe you. Okay. Well, in a sense, so what? Right? You still have power. You can have an internal locus of control. You can direct yourself. And your life is not built around what women think of you. You can build your life around your own desires and goals and values, at which point he will probably say, what are those? And now we've made progress, right? Because now that would be like the next step of progress is to say, well, what do you as a man, as a young man, want? And lots of the guys I work with, when I ask them that, say, I don't know. And the reason is nobody ever asked them before. There's never been a time in their life where someone has said to them, you matter, your goals matter, you need to develop. What direction do you want to develop in? Like, what comes naturally to you? What are your loves? What are your passions? What do you enjoy doing? And believe it or not, I just think there are a lot of young men who've never had anyone take it even that much interest in them. And so I think that once that relationship with himself can be resolved, his values and goals clarified, once if he can begin to change his habits of living in such a way that they reflect his goals and his values, and he can begin to see his own power, because that's at the heart of a lot of this, I think, for black-pilled young men, is that they experience themselves as having no power.
Yeah.
And that as they begin to experience power that's directed not toward getting women to like them, because let's assume all 4.5 billion of them hate you, but toward their own, the life they want to live. I think when they begin to experience that, then maybe their attitudes toward relationships might also change, right? That as they move out of the prison they've put themselves in, new vistas of understanding might open up. But that's kind of the program that I would think of as the encouragement that I would want to give.
I just want to comment. I think it sounds, it makes a lot of sense and it sounds really effective. One of the things that keeps popping up in my head as a big issue is, let's say this 22-year-old young man goes to therapy because he's really trying to figure this out. And these are things that would probably come up in the therapy room. Our problem, I think, as a, therapy in the therapeutic world, in the therapeutic space, is that our therapists aren't being trained to be pro man in any regard. Our therapists are being trained to do the exact opposite, which is sort of reinforce that loop that I am terrible because I'm a man. And so I just kind of want to get your thoughts about that. I mean, that's a lot. We're here trying to turn that around in various ways as therapists, and the various things that we do, in support to try to
Right.
move this, into steer the ship back into the right direction in that world. but it's exceedingly difficult, I think, and very, it's a really big, it's bigger than just us. So what are your thoughts about kind of how we do that?
I think you do it by encouraging men to become therapists.
Uh,
I was really surprised. Probably 6 months ago, I was doing a podcast interview with someone else who is a male therapist, and who pointed out to me that about 75% of therapists are female.
yeah.
And in that way, it is essentially a female-owned service. And so, if you want to steer the ship back, I think that the way to do that is to ask, well, what would it take for men to want to become therapists? And it would probably require a total revolution in the way graduate school programs in psychology or counseling work.
Which we
And
need anyway.
what's that?
Mm-hmm.
Which we need anyway.
Well, I mean, and
badly.
one of the reasons, sure, but one of the things that needs to happen is that it should not cost $45,000 to become a therapist, right? I mean, if you're going to pay tuition for what, 3 years to get a master's degree, and then you're going to pay for supervision, et cetera, it should be, if you want to steer the ship, the therapeutic ship in a way that better serves young male clients, it should be at least financially possible for, let's say, older men to seek a second career in that without spending money that he doesn't have. No guy wants to be 45 years old and taking out $30,000 in student loans. So part of the way that sort of the therapeutic establishment could show its commitment to young men is just to make scholarships available to exclusively to men who want to be therapists. Now, you can understand that would be, shall we say, politically indelicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But until we have that kind of commitment, I just don't think that's going to work. And so this is part of the reason you see a proliferation of male coaches.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Interesting. Yeah. I was wondering about that. You're right. There is a proliferation. I have a question. So we're talking about black-pilled men and boys. Is there a female equivalent? Is there a black-pilled female? And if so, what does that look like?
It may be, but I haven't seen it online as much. And I think the reason is twofold. Number one, I think that there are many unhappy single women. Let's say that, right? And there are many women, many women to whom terrible things have been done, right? And so perhaps the closest thing to the black-pilled woman that I have encountered is the woman to whom terrible things have been done. And now she comes into my Twitter comments because she's been abandoned, she's been abused in deeply personal and horrible ways. And so now she just comes into my Twitter comment, no matter what, to say, whatever you're suffering, you deserve it, right? Because she's actually talking to whoever abused her. So that might be your black-pilled woman. But younger women, I think, have a much different experience. And at least as I observe them online, if you're a younger woman, you can tweet, "I'm so lonely and no man will approach me, and what's wrong with all these men?" And you will have 400 comments telling you what's wrong with men, right? You will immediately get support in a way that if a younger man posts about his loneliness, he will get, "Whatever you are suffering, you deserve," right?
Yeah.
And so there is a kind of disparity that carries out both, I think, in real life, where women in their struggles are supported both personally and institutionally, and even online, where women receive support from other women and from men who want their approval. So if a woman posts, "I don't know why no man will approach me and wife me up," right? She will get, "I don't understand either because you're gorgeous," right? And
Yeah.
the man will get whatever you are suffering you deserve.
Yeah.
And so, and also women just have more options in a way. So she's going to post, why will nobody wife me up? And there will be, out of her 400 comments, there will at least be 50 guys who would do it right then. So she
I
has
do like
options,
being female.
right? So she has options, right? And so, um, and she knows she can create a TikTok video crying, and there will be an overwhelming wave of support for her. And I don't mean to criticize these women. I mean, they're trying to live their lives as best as anyone else is, right? But structurally, our culture is tilted in their direction in a way. And until they become the black-pilled woman, abuse survivor, who's been manipulated, abused, abandoned, whatever. And then she comes in and says terrible things to young men. But the reason she's doing that is because nobody really cares about her either, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a big disparity between what the black-pilled young man is and sort of the black-pilled middle-aged woman who's been through the ringer and is just expressing her hatred at the people who've abused her online. It's a different dynamic there, I think.
I think it was maybe even today or yesterday, the last couple of days that you responded to I don't know if it was a TikTok or an Instagram reel of a young
Right.
woman talking about to her future husband.
Mhm.
And it's funny because before I just saw it because I looked at your feed right before we got on the call, but I'd seen the video last night
Mhm.
when I was watching reels with my husband. And at first I was like, oh yeah, I want to, you go off, girl. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, would you ever get over yourself? Like, I mean, there was something extremely, I mean, Pollyanna-ish, I would say,
Sure.
but even more than that, it was incredibly self-important and self-absorbed. And the last couple of weeks, I don't know what it is, but I've been hit with this, it's like almost like a moment of clarity that fully realizing at my advanced age that women are incredibly self-absorbed and self-obsessed, and we encourage it in each other. We're also obsessed with our female counterparts,
Mhm.
and we live in a sort of environment of extreme. I don't actually see it as competition like that woman you guys talked to, Leslie. Although definitely it can be. It's almost like mimicry. We're
Mhm.
constantly watching and scanning for what other women are doing because we're curious about their lives and we just can't really get enough. And we're also very concerned about ourselves and how we're perceived, and are we thought of as pretty, and are we thought of as smart, and are we thought of as this X, Y, and Z. And the way culture is set up at the moment, it completely rewards that, as you were saying. And the male version of that has been decimated, right? So there's a different male process for kind of going through those self-obsessed years of youth,
Mhm.
the adolescence and the young and the callowness of your 20s. And that in men that's like been bulldozed, and in women it's just as the young kids say, glazed. Like they're constantly having smoke blown up their ass, and told that they're deserving of the world when they're really not. They're not deserving of the world. They're not contributing. And all they're doing is demanding and entitled. And your response to this tweet, I thought was really, really great. I mean, because what I've noticed about your stuff over the years is that you're very fair to men and women.
I try.
And that is so rare because, like we said at the beginning, online men and women seem to be at each other's throats. And if you defend men, women attack, and if you defend women, men attack,
I've
as Leslie
noticed.
was saying. Yes. So your response was very fair. Can you give everyone a quick overview of what that was?
Yeah, I'll say two things. First, before I talk about the tweet, I just want to say that it came to me. This is kind of the summary I was wanting to make in terms of the way you were talking, Jenny, about the culture. Maybe it would be fair to say that when young men, look in the social mirror, right, when they look into the reflection they get back about themselves from our society, mainstream society, they are shown the worst of themselves. And when young women look into the social mirror, they are shown the best of themselves.
Mm.
And 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 what we have to be is whole human beings. And there have to be social room to be whole human beings. So we have to have room for women to be calculating, to be shrewd, to be manipulative, to be whatever. I mean, some women are really do have flaws and faults, and that's okay to say, right? And we have to have room for men to be inherently valuable as beings, to be heroic, to be noble, to be all of those, all the good things that a man can be. But currently, I think our social structure is such that those things are almost limited out. Like you can't mention that human beings are complex. As far as the tweet goes, so the tweet was in response to this video of a young woman, maybe 20, 21, talking about her future husband and how she wants someone who will care more about her birthday than she does and bring her coffee and be so excited to, be near her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things I said was that that's fine. Her head is full of romantic, unreasonable, unrealistic expectations. But again, we have to have room for young people to have romantic and unrealistic expectations. That's good. It's good when you are 20 to not know what you're talking about. That is good and
Yes.
proper, right?
I say that all the time.
Um, and so that was part of my response. On the other hand, I said that this is where I said most uh, I think at least many women do not understand the role that rejection plays in a man's formative experience. And that when young men hear this list of things that this pretty girl wants, they hear, here is a list of the ways that I will fail you. And when I fail to bring you your coffee in the morning and I'm not enthusiastic enough about your birthday, you will leave me and go and hook up with Chad. That's what they hear, right? And it's true. And so they're angry that she's not like, and I think Jenny, you pointed out, she's not saying, here's what I will offer in return for any of these things. So they don't like that either. But I think, we do have like you said, a, a culture in which the advice to women is don't settle. Hold out for the best that you can get. And literally, what, 90+% of young men have gotten the message, I am not the best she could get.
Yeah.
And there will always be someone. I mean, someone posted to my Twitter feed this meme of Superman flying up in the air holding Lois Lane in his arms. And she's thinking, well, I wonder if I could do better. Right. And I think a lot of
Oh
men
my
think that way,
God.
right? They think, even if I was Superman, right? How do I know I'm not going to lose her to Captain America?
Hmm.
Right. And
Hmm.
so they think, well, why invest? Because they see all of this messaging that goes out to young women saying, don't settle. And I think it's it's hard for people to understand that most men will always be average and most women will always be average.
Yeah.
But for a lot of guys to think of themselves as average would be a step up. And I think
Yeah.
for a lot of young women now to think of themselves as average because they've been so shown the best of themselves so much, to think of themselves as average, they would maybe feel like that was a step down in their self-conception.
You
I think it
know,
would be worse. I think it would be like a psychotic break for half of them because
I
they're so extremely built up.
well, I think
Mm,
that's interesting, and I see a lot of that online. You see the,
mhm,
fairly average pretty girl, who thinks who wants to put together that list. But then there's also the hordes of young women who are sort of exiting the whole female game
mhm,
altogether and kind of adopting this sort of genderless aesthetic, the sort of trend in lesbianism, and the trend. And I'm not saying that all lesbians are trenders. I'm not at all saying that. I'm just saying that it's very popular for large numbers of young women to sort of eschew the heteronormative dating culture altogether and to sort of uglify themselves, like somebody mentioned in the chat, the blue hairs, so I wonder if that's kind of more of an analog to the black pilled young man. And I think that it's really fascinating to me. There's kind of this push pull in the culture for young men, this push away by feminism, by angry feminist rhetoric, where it's been okay for years and years to just say negative things about men as a blanket group. It's totally fine. It's totally acceptable. It's always bewildered me. I mean, I can remember in my 20s when my best friend had this kind of like casually dismissive attitude about men. And I always would wonder, but I was such a voracious reader on all these beautiful people and their beautiful thoughts that were men, that I've read their minds and their thoughts and their creativity all my life, and my wonderful father and my brothers and how can you just take them as a class and throw them away? And now I mean, I love my husband and I have wonderful sons. And how can this be such a popular thing to just completely shit on a whole half the population when they're so capable of everything good? And so there's that push from the angry feminism that we're seeing taught so casually in education, still just pumped out onto women, but also the pull of pornography and this world of digital play where you can have it all, but you can't really have any of it.
Right.
But you can have so much of it, and you can sort of delude yourself into satiating that sexual drive and even growing it and distorting it through this exploration of digital pornography. So there's this push away from real women and this pull into digital prostitution. Right. And I wonder, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to get your thoughts on those elements.
Yeah, I think obviously probably pornography does play a huge role for a lot of men in this. I was kind of alluding to it earlier when I said that contemporary culture has provided these sort of digital insulations against loneliness, right? That for young men. And this is what I mean is that you can sit in your room and indulge yourself however you want to do that. And that just for men, but I think, and certainly pornography is a shaping influence, but I would sort of maintain that the use of pornography is a symptom of something even deeper, which is all of these things I've been talking about, which convince so many young men that a loving, healthy sexual relationship with a woman is impossible. Right. And that many men might make a much more concerted effort to give up pornography if they believed that an intimate, loving, healthy marriage was a real possibility for them, and that continued pornography use would in some way interfere with that. Now, not all of them would, but some would. And but we can't even reclaim those some because we can't promise them that that's possible for them. And so, like, I understand, it'd be easy to talk about the problems of digital pornography for the whole hour. And part of the reason that I didn't, and I don't typically, is because it's a symptom of the underlying belief structure that have been inculcated in so many young men, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you're right. It would be easy to talk about it for the whole hour, and especially aspects like the exposure of really young kids to it, sure, and how that's really sexual abuse of young kids, and Absolutely. It can really form and distort sexuality for throughout a person's life when they get that early exposure. But not to dwell on that too much. I think if you ever want to talk about that, that's a topic I'm interested in quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, the black-pilled young woman as the woman who exits the whole thing. I mean, that's something I'm interested in. I see a lot of the comments about hypergamy, and women think they're so great and they always think that they should get better. The Lois, like the meme you mentioned, Lois, she thinks she can get better than Superman. But that's one slice of the feminine represented narrowly online. And I see so many other young women who just feel like they have no place either. And it's the MGTOW, it's the, and now this is, what is it, the WGTOW? I don't know. But I see that as well.
Maybe
I wonder
just
what
don't
your
see
thoughts
it.
are about that.
Maybe I just don't see that. It's certainly possible. And I haven't thought much about it, so I'd rather hear what you have to say. Because it never occurred to me that what you're calling the blue hairs might in fact be kind of black-pilled young women, but it makes obvious sense to me. But I wonder if those women who are exiting the dating game, in the sense, even if they're young, aren't primarily motivated by real life abuse that they've suffered versus kind of online discourse. I'd be very curious about that. I don't know.
I would suggest that a lot of it has to do with education. I mean, when I was in graduate school just a few years ago, one of the things that we were just being programmed to really hate was cis heteronormativity.
Yeah.
Which is mostly like, you better not like men. You better not. And the men were being horrible, and that's horrible abuse. And you're right. I've spoken with men who have made it through counseling programs or who have exited them because of the institutional abuse. It's really inexcusable to be treating people that way. But so you're directly abusing the men, and then you're weaponizing the women to abuse the men, and to basically also abuse themselves.
Sure.
By
I think you're
alienating
right.
themselves.
And what about those signs? I think these are horrible. Those signs, you see them in people's yards and in school saying the future is female. So you're essentially telling men that they have no future and there's no place for them in the future. I just think, I mean, would you say that about any other group? You'd have problems. What if you said the future is white or the future is black? That people would have an issue with it.
Sure.
I've never
Yes.
seen those.
Oh yeah,
That's a
it's
perfect
a big
example.
thing.
That's a perfect
Wow.
example of what I mean when I say the social mirror reflects to women their best.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And simultaneously, they're the worst to men.
I think the problem is that neither young men and young women or girls and boys are being shown how to become healthy adults. I mean, it's very much the opposite. It's either punitive for boys, overly praising for girls. It's also very racially dependent, and there's a lot of inflicting of category group identity guilt upon certain children and not other children, and direct interactions between parents have changed so much between parents and children. So there's no more sort of common sense parenting of just like, no, I said no, and that's the end of it. And, carefully you'll get a smack. Absolutely nothing like that. Everything is gentle parenting or affirming children and building up their self-esteem.
Positive parenting.
And so there's parents have absolutely destroyed their own wisdom. They've rejected their own authority and all of that ancestral knowledge of how humans were raised since the dawn of time, almost, at least in the last couple of millennia. Adult authority, child is there to learn and to measure up to the adult standards. And obviously that can go too far in one direction, but we've gone completely far in the other direction. And now then we wonder why we have a mental health crisis among young people. Parents have ceded authority to therapists, which, as you said, Christine, are captured by a certain ideology that is very anti-family, it's very anti-human. And so when we see young men and young women act out in these ways that are, the opposite of conducive to harmony, that's on us. That's on Gen Xers and Boomers who thought they could just throw away everything that was wise about the old ways of doing things and adopt these sort of like scientific, pseudoscientific, pseudo-psychological notions. And we're really living out in the aftermath of that. And this is why I always say to people, culture wars and all of these things that I write about, and I can write about them in sometimes like a deliberately sort of sarcastic way, they're actually incredibly profound. They're like one of the most defining factors of the condition of our institutions now is these runaway children who are now young adults with raging egos on one hand, who have absolutely zero competencies on the other. Boys and girls alike, very little competency, very high expectations. It's very, very negative. I do see a lot of difference, and I see signs for happiness in Gen Z, I would like to say.
I'm going to read a couple of comments real quick because I'm mindful of time. And we've had so many great comments that I have been kind of reading and keeping abreast of as they've come in. But the conversation's just been so good that I haven't broken in. Student of Rhythm says, there's no standard for healthy adulthood in a society that has abandoned moral consensus.
Yeah.
Howard Schoonover says, guys, the future, such as it is, what few of them there are, the future is babies, like always, the future is babies. Student of Rhythm says, if there's no ultimate meaning, then we're all just looking for a warm spot to await the coming oblivion, and a fragmented, affluent society offers all kinds of variety to find my tribe. We've had so many. Thank you all so much for your engagement there. And James from Bahia, I saw you're gently chiding me for being too thin-skinned having a YouTube channel. You're right. And I that was the first time I'd had that experience of just getting massive negative feedback. And since it was about something where the guest was sharing something personal and I used something personal to make a counterpoint, it was a sensitive spot for me. And it kind of taught me about how much I don't necessarily want to expose sensitive things to public criticism. So I've gotten better at that, but that was a lesson for me. This has been such an interesting conversation. And Dean, I have really enjoyed getting the chance to speak with you. Do you
May I
want
say
to
one more thing?
Yes, please.
It kind of reminds me of it kind of was sparked by two things, Leslie, where you were saying, look at all of the great and beautiful thoughts men have had. And Jennifer's asking, when I was talking to Jennifer about men having a conception of themselves outside of the purview of women. I think part of the problem is that education for men has really been cut off from learning about and understanding the lives of great men. And so, for example, I often think about Beethoven, who suffered enormously in his life. Very unhappy in romance, homelessness, alcoholism, went deaf, which, as a composer, that is a occupational hindrance. Eventually fell into tremendous despair, eventually converted to Catholicism, came back when he was deaf and wrote the Ninth Symphony, one of the most transcendent pieces of music in human history. And to do this, he lay on the piano so that he could feel the music. And what I would want to leave men with, young men, is to say, you don't have to live by comparing yourself to what women think of you. Live comparing yourself to Beethoven and ask yourself, is there something in you that burns like it burned in him? Find that thing. Find the thing that is so important to you that you would do it, that you, even if you had to lay on the piano, and give yourself to that, because that's where your future is. So that's what I wanted to say.
Fuck yes to that.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dean.
Love
Thank you. It's been
Dean,
great.
tell
Thank
people
you.
where they can find you.
3 places. You find me at deanabbott.com. I do some coaching work with a company called A Life Designed. You could go to alifedesigned.org, or you could just find me on Twitter at Dean Abbott.
Wonderful. And after a few hours from now, I'll have this updated so that you can find those links in the description as
Okay.
well.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
so much more to say, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll get you back on in a few
Anytime.
weeks if you're up for it. That'd be
Sure,
great.
anytime.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us in the chat, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Monday.